Welcome to another edition of Coastline, and this month our topic is education. I'm joined by Jim Forschner, who is the Director of Communications for the Beaufort County School District, and also by Bonnie Almond, who has had many roles in education in her career, but most recently is the Chief Instruction Services Officer for the school district. Hello folks, welcome to Coastline today.
Hi. Good to be here.
Well, there are a lot of things that are going on, and we are just about to enter into an election cycle where school board members are about to be elected. So this could, change a lot of direction that the district ends up going in the coming year. I know earlier this year in the spring, we held a bond referendum that did not pass. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, what you were seeking in that bond referendum and whether you have any plans to bring it back up again.
Well, the big focus for the bond referendum obviously was growth, specifically in the Bluffton area. That's where most of the focus was. It would have expanded May River High School, expanded River Ridge Academy, additional classrooms, built a new school serving the Bluffton area down in the new Riverside area of Bluffton, and also the career and technology education centers at several schools. Voters did not approve it, and so now we, as a result of that, we've had to go back to the drawing board. And the option that we're looking at now is mobile classrooms and installing those in Bluffton, because again, I'm sure we'll talk about growth here in a minute. That's where the focus of growth is in Beaufort County these days.
Well, anybody that's ridden on 170 knows that there is an incredible amount of growth, particularly in the Bluffton area. And your 5-year projection is calling for upwards of 90 mobile classrooms. Is that correct?
That's the plan that the Board of Education is pursuing now, and some schools have room for those mobile classrooms, some don't. And so the reasons we're having these discussions now about rezoning, redistricting, redrawing of these attendance lines is because the option now being mobiles, we have to put those mobiles on school campuses that have room for them. And then when that happens, you have to move students from the schools that are the most crowded to the schools that have room to accommodate them.
And this is also one of the topics that's being discussed at these various town hall style meetings that you're having. We pre-recorded this, so we're now, as people are watching this, in October, which means there's only 2 town hall meetings left. Some were rescheduled because of the hurricane, but you've got one October 3rd at Battery Creek High School, and then at the end of the month at Beaufort High School, I believe October 29th. Both of those are at 6 p.m. So there's still opportunity for comment. But one of the concerns that some of the people south of the Broad might have is this rezoning requirement that school district and school board members are pursuing, because this is not the first time there has been rezoning. And so the frustration, as I understand it from some parents, is that, oh, here we go again. How do you address that?
Well, when you live in one of the fastest growing communities in the state, rezoning is a consequence. You're going to have to do that unless everybody moves into areas, in different areas in exactly the right proportions. In Bluffton, even within Bluffton, it's sort of off kilter, because you mentioned 170. The most crowded schools we have are in that 170 corridor. River Ridge Academy, Pritchardville Academy. And so it is something that happens just because of the fact that it's a tremendously high growth area.
Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to live in Bluffton. Everybody wants to be near the new Sam's Club. Yeah.
Right.
That's probably the reason that you're facing this. So when you do that, and you have somebody, for example, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. You have somebody that has purposed to move into Bluffton so they could get into some of those nice new schools that have some pretty good programs to offer. And then all of a sudden you then rezone them so they're no longer in there. Is there a level of frustration that can be expected?
Well, it's upsetting the parents, upsetting the kids. Obviously, you'd like to be able to go to a school and stay there. Unfortunately, that's not always possible, again, when you have that sort of tremendous growth. On the plus side of things, there's not a bad school in Bluffton. Those are terrific schools. We have terrific schools all over the school district. So it's not as if you're going to be moving from a good school to a bad one. They're all top-notch schools.
Mm-hmm. We use a term, school choice. How does that apply in Beaufort County?
Well, in the old days when I grew up, you were in a neighborhood and you went to a specific school. With school choice, and Beaufort County has had this for several years now, the idea is that a parent and a parent knows that their child has specific strengths, specific talents. So what we've had here in Beaufort County is every school has selected an area of focus, something that they want to do particularly well, that they focus on. And then the parent can look at the programs that are offered at that school and say, I think my child has a great talent for the arts, for example. And a parent whose child is talented in the arts might choose a school with an arts focus. Mm-hmm. Another good example is Montessori. It's popular, tremendously popular among some parents. But not among all. So we have a school in the northern part of the county and a school in the southern part of the county that offers Montessori, and a parent can choose that. We have dual immersion schools, that's language immersion, where kids study in English and Chinese during the day. One of those in the north, one of those in the south. So it's an opportunity for parents to select the type of academics that they think their child is best suited for.
So does the option for school choice bypass the zoning requirements that is put on that particular, and do you have to apply for that?
It does, and you do apply for it. And it happens every year in January where we open it up, and the parents have about a month to look at what's available. They can visit those schools. We have open houses where you can go and select or apply for the program you want, and you are approved for it. There are times when that can't be approved. One of the things we talked about was overcrowding. River Ridge Academy, for example, tremendously crowded school. We haven't approved any choice applications for that school, standard choice applications, in a couple of years. Yes, it is something that you apply for, and right now somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,300 students district-wide are attending a school that is in an area that's not one that they are zoned for by virtue of where they live.
Why do you think the bond failed? There's been a lot of questions asked of people why they voted it down this past April, and one that caught my eye that was a little concerning was this individual said, well, there's such an upheaval right now with the school board infighting and with the administration on its way out and the looking for a new superintendent, that we just don't feel comfortable making major decisions right now, and when things maybe settle down, we'll revisit it. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, if those were the objections, then that certainly should be resolved. We think it should be, because we will have a new superintendent. Right now we're in the midst of a superintendent search. That will end up with the Board of Education choosing a new superintendent next spring, and that person will start on July 1. In addition to that, you did mention the, well, now I've completely lost my train of thought.
School district, school board members?
The school board members, yes. The elections coming up in November, of the 11 board members, 7 of those are up for re-election. So we will have essentially a very different school board that's going to be seated in January, and that board will have on its plate as its first major responsibility the selection of a new superintendent.
Mm-hmm. And just to make it clear, this is going to be very transparent. As I understand, you've got 20 to 30 town hall meeting again style meetings in the first half of 2019, to think forward, 2019, that the public will be able to look at the various finalists and ask them questions. Is that my understanding?
The first step is actually underway now, and that is the selection of a consulting firm that will direct the process, that will advertise the position, that will go out and bring in applicants, and that is happening right now. In fact, by the time the viewers watch this, the board may have actually selected that. They're interviewing this Friday, which is September 28th.
Okay, so, and you've got 6 candidates right now for that. 6
candidates for that. That firm will come in and they will go to work. The new board will be seated in January, the 7 new members, so you'll have those 11 folks. And again, it will be their job to do this. And they will work with that consulting firm. Yes, it will be very transparent. The community will have an opportunity to say, this is the type of person we're looking for. Once the finalists are selected, they will come here for interviews. And typically, there will be town hall meetings where the public will have a chance to meet them, ask them questions, and to see whether they think they're a good fit or not. And the public will have a chance to send their feedback to the Board of Education. So while it will be the board's decision ultimately, there will be plenty of opportunities for the public and parents and even students to weigh in.
When I asked earlier about the reason the bond referendum failed and thought it might be, the personnel issues or, elections, whatever, your response was, if that is the reason, then. Was there any other reason that you might see that people voted down the bond?
The other thing that I think we heard some about was the concern over the FBI subpoenas, the FBI investigation. We really hope that that will be resolved because that is sort of a cloud that's hanging over the process. We hope that will be resolved as quickly as possible so that we can move on and put that behind us.
Are you getting any feedback from the federal authorities that
None.
they're nearing an end to this?
No. Other than responding to them when they ask for documents, there's been no contact that I'm aware of.
Okay. Well, we're finding on a national level the FBI moves at its own pace these days, so we'll see what happens. But all right, we've got a couple of minutes left in this particular segment. Before we continue on, I did want to again involve Bonnie here. Bonnie, you've got an amazing background. You came here from North Carolina, where you'd been both a secondary and elementary principal, and then you came in as the director of the district's secondary education program, which is grades 9 through 12, correct?
It will be 6 through 12.
Oh, 6 through 12, okay. And from there, this is the part that I love because I'm a real techie. You became director of innovation out of necessity for a period of time because of the great qualifications you had. You were made Beaufort High School principal, and now you are again the Chief Instruction Services Officer for the district. Before we talk about what you do as Chief Instruction Officer, tell me about that time that you were Director of Innovation. What does that job entail?
Okay, well, when I first came to Beaufort County as secondary director, I worked with all of the secondary schools. Some of it's compliance, assistant schools, and areas where they need assistance, generally helping out. And because of my experience at the elementary level, I kept getting pulled down to elementary within the district. So at the time, I think the shift to the innovation, we had a lot of increases in technology. We were trying to get our teachers ready to roll 100% to use these devices and teach our students a little differently than we had before, and that was K-12. So that is part of the reason why I went into that role. I've had a lot of experience in time working with schools. So it was kind of a natural fit because I could work with K-12 and I could work with the teachers, partner with our technology department in the district too, to make sure that we were utilizing the devices that we had purchased.
You know, Dr. Phil, he talks about everybody's on their devices all the time, and I'm guilty of that myself. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that, how iPads and laptops are being brought into the classroom and applauded by educators right after this break. Coastline, our topic, education. We were talking to Bonnie Almond. She is the Chief Instruction Services Officer for the Beaufort County School District. We're also joined by Jim Foster. He's the Director of Communication. And we were talking about the use of technology. And Jim, you indicated in the break that you are using some really neat programs, including Google Classroom, and what was the other one you called?
ClassLink.
Yes,
ClassLink. ClassLink, okay.
Well, so now when a teacher, student comes into school and they boot up their device, they click on a button and there's a dashboard that comes up that has numerous different programs and tools that we use within our district academically. So, for example, if a teacher's taking attendance, they click on PowerSchool, and so it simplifies things. It puts it all in one place. It saves time. You can compare and utilize different things instructionally for students and then for teachers also.
Wow. That attendance online blows my mind. That whole changes the whole paradigm of playing hooky, you know.
It does.
So what do you do now? Do you still require a letter from the parent, or do they send an email? How does that work these days?
We have lots of requirements, and you would find all of that in the Beaufort County School District policy, but it does drive the processes and the procedures that we use to take care of things that really aren't education. You know, it's not the teaching piece,
Right.
but it's all of those details that we have to keep track of and make sure that we're in compliance.
And it's those policies that, you know, I was curious about, because the first thought I had, having been just an average student, was that when having these devices, is there a temptation to be texting one another and to, you know, be Googling things that maybe you ought not to be Googling?
Yes, there is a lot of that. I don't know a student that does not have a phone.
So there's a distinction between what the child or the youth brings in and what you provide then.
Correct.
And maybe
Yeah.
we should address that too.
Talk about that a bit, Jim.
Beaufort County is one of just a few districts in the state that is a one-to-one district. One student, one device. Our Board of Education made that investment 4 or 5 years ago. Our program is called Connect to Learn, connect with a 2 and then learn. All of our students, 22,000 of them, have a device that's their personal device. They pick it up at the beginning of the year, they turn it in at the end. The younger students have iPads made by Apple, and the older students, grades 3 and above, have laptop computers. That's a recognition of the world we live in. You wouldn't imagine walking into any business in Beaufort County and saying, boy, do you really need all these newfangled computers? It's just a fact of life. And so these students are going to be living in that world. What we have with one-to-one is an equity component, so that every student, no matter what their family circumstances are, has the same opportunity, the same technical access to all these amazing resources for learning.
So you've got a level playing field.
We do. It's a level playing field.
Now, again, I think differently, and I know that the temptation is to make sure that kids can now have 50 characters per second or whatever the requirement is. You see, I've got an Apple Pencil here, and it's because I still like cursive writing. Has cursive writing gone the way of the buggy and horse in this day and age?
Well, I think everyone needs to know how to read and write with cursive writing. However, with all of the devices that we have in our personal life and in our professional life and in our school life, the device is there, you know, and students can put things in writing quickly or more quickly, and we can also test more. For example, if you have an online test, you're not going to have to take 3 hours to write all of the answers out. It's typically a program or tests where you see the question or whatever and you answer the question.
So the teacher says, children, open your devices,
Correct.
and the test appears.
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm still asked that question at least once or twice a year. Do you still require cursive writing? And we do. I can't remember the exact grade, but that's a state requirement. I want to think it's
I think it's
third grade or third grade.
Okay.
But we are still required to provide it. We do. But again, it's one of these things. In the real world, more people are typing today than they are writing longhand.
Sure, and again, with the devices, they are now prepared for dealing with the real world. What is the requirement in terms of the student to care for his device as stewards of the, you know, public taxpayers?
Well, we have a document that spells out exactly what their responsibility is, and they sign that and the parent signs that. When they get their device, every parent has to pay $20 to ensure that we have the insurance on it that we need to do. So with that, I would say that students have to be taught how to take care of a device. Just like if you buy a new car, you've got to figure out how to take care of that car. So that's part of our process.
So the building in of responsibility
Right,
also plays
it is.
into that.
They are insured, and the most frequent repairs you might imagine is a broken screen.
Broken screen.
Right, and our tech people in our schools can do some of that, but then at the end of the year, when they turn them back in, we're looking at that device to see if the rules were followed or the regulations were followed. So,
You know what shocks me
what's that?
is that with these devices, I see these kids with these backpacks that must weigh 70 pounds. What are they carrying in there that couldn't all be fit on this single device?
Books,
So books are still part of the
athletic
curriculum.
clothing, you know, different things like that. However, we are shifting more and more to online textbooks or programs to support us instead of having that textbook. Now, we still have textbooks, but some teachers utilize that and some don't, and a lot of textbook companies now have the online component for it.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it could be a student choice that didn't want to have the locker or something like that.
I gotcha.
But sometimes they are heavy for some of these little kids.
If your question is, in 10 years, will everything be in one device and we will have fewer books? I would say certainly we'll have fewer.
Absolutely.
That's probably
Yes.
the
Every
natural
year.
evolution of that.
Okay, all right. We've got 5 minutes left and so much to talk about. You know, this really falls into your bailiwick, Bonnie, is some of the different programs that are out there. By the way, just to inform our public, you know, we're lucky, I guess, for kids to get some days off because of Hurricane Florence, which didn't end up affecting us, thank God. But you are still mandated for 180 days, and tell us a little bit about the program that some counties are using but that we didn't get approved for this year.
Right, well, the South Carolina Oversight Committee chose to pilot 5 different districts in the state of South Carolina. We applied, we were not selected here in Beaufort County.
And that would have allowed makeup days on your device.
Possibly. That will not be an option for Beaufort County School District because of that, the State Department, we even talked to the State Department, and they want to work specifically with those 5. However, we are internally thinking about what we could do. You know, in any district, you've got some teachers that are looking for that cutting edge everything. And they'll go in and they'll know exactly what to do using those devices. Other teachers, you know, we're providing a lot of professional development and support to help them get to where we want them to be. So I see a year from now, if we have another hurricane, which we wish we don't, but I can see we will be more ready
Yes.
in a year. I can tell you this, that with makeup days, it really has to do with high school, because high school requires 120 hours to get a credit towards graduation. So if you were going to do something on the device with elementary schools, that's great, but what we've got to do is make sure that what we do at the high school level reflects compliance with the state. So all of our diplomas will be correct.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to be saying they're going to be emailed. We're not going to have any pomp and circumstances this year. But okay, few minutes left. Let's talk a little bit about CATE, Career and Technical Education. Is that an avenue that is essentially steering people away from college or university education?
I will tell you that it is very different from what I grew up with and what you probably grew up with.
I was thinking of vocational education.
Yeah, for us it was wood shop and what was something, maybe home economics. Now CATE covers everything from welding and auto technicians to engineering to health sciences. If you want to be a registered nurse, there's a wide range of
It is,
study.
and it's actually compliance with the state. We have 16 clusters in the state of South Carolina, and in Beaufort County, we have 13 of them that we are actively using in our district. With that cluster, it goes down to a pathway. So if you wanted to be an IT guy, there are specific courses that you take, and it's you have to have 4 for it to become a completer. And see, what is very interesting about this day and time, things are changing. For example, this year when the accountability measures come out, they're measuring our completers. You know, it's becoming a part of our accountability overall. And you know, in Beaufort County, I think the vision is we're trying to give students and parents as many choices as we can. Obviously, you can't have every choice in one school, so that's why we've gone to the CATE centers. That's why we do participate with ACE. But a student now, if they understand what our offerings are, hopefully between them and their parent, they can have a good decision about what direction they want to go in. Some of those pathways have several different kinds of completers. So for example, if you were a senior this year, the goal would be to graduate with 32 credits at the highest level that you're capable of, but also to receive a completer, which is a certification or a license. And some of those completers feed into the community college system or the university system, and it's becoming very critical that you take part in
So
that.
Kate can be both an adjunct to the university system as well as a career that stands on its own, because as we were talking about in the break, you can graduate high school with a welding certificate or a degree, which will give you a $60,000 job right off the bat.
Or you can, again, you're correct. It's possible to get a certification where you can enter the workforce immediately or the military, or you can go to a 2-year college or a 4-year college. It just depends on the path.
We're out of time, but I did want to leave with one thought. You know, going back to that bond referendum, I just correct me if I'm wrong, but I did the math, and had the bond passed, the impact would have been $9 per $100,000 valuation on a house per year. You know, so if you had a $250,000 house or a $300,000 house, you'd really only be spending more, about $27 max. In the tax impact on a Beaufort County citizen, right?
The day before the election, I could have given you that number off the top of my head. Now I don't have it.
Well, I got it from
anymore.
the very.
It was not a big number.
It was not a huge amount.
No.
So, as it may come up again in the future, we want the public to be aware that it's minimal impact on the voter, maximum impact on the schools.
Right.
Right. I mean, we do have, we live in a wonderful place. People want to move here. We have great schools. We have this wonderful natural setting. We have great culture, diversity of cultures. People want to come here. And as long as that happens, we're going to have to deal with this issue of overcrowding.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, thank you so much. Jim Foster, who is Director of Communications for the Beaufort County School District, and Bonnie Almond, who is the Chief Instruction Services Officer at the same location. That's our show for this month. We thank you for joining us. Next month, well, we're getting into the holidays, so we're going to see what's coming up as far as fun things to do around the county, and we'll be joined by some representatives of both the Hilton Head Bluffton Chamber of Commerce and the Beaufort County Regional Chamber of Commerce. We hope you'll join us for that. Goodbye.